So let's talk cymbals, man. Before we get into the the new collaboration with DFD, the mod line, what's the last thing you made?
The last thing I made was the set of B12, formerly from Big Cymbal Boston, cymbals that you sent me.
That's the last thing you worked on?
Well, for you guys.
No, I mean for yourself.
Oh, for myself? Well, I just did a cool project with R. David R. I don't know if you saw that yet. He sent me a gong.
Was it a gong? Yeah.
It was a 26-inch, I think it was like a Zildjian promotional gong or something. And it had like a weird crack in it, but he had me do it into a flat ride, which was pretty cool. So we just wrapped that up. That actually just launched today, which is really cool. And then I'm just crushing mods. I have like crazy mod orders right now. Just people, usually like mod orders are like 1 or 2 cymbals, per customer. But like the past like couple weeks, it's been like 7, 8 in a box.
Oh,
so
goodness.
Which is cool because like if you're gonna pay for shipping, pay for.
That's true. That's
pay
smart.
for it one time. But
when you get a mod, do you get specific requests, or is it like me, just take this crappy cymbal and make it sound better?
Usually it's more of that. Like I think a lot of folks, obviously they're not cymbal smiths, so they don't necessarily know what the possibilities are, like with the cymbal that they have. You know what I mean? So the first thing is like, hey, I just have this thing. I spent money on it, but I don't use it because I don't like it. Or I used to like it, but it just doesn't do what I want anymore. So it always has to start with like a conversation. It's usually like several back and forth things to try to sort of figure out what can be done. But those are my favorite ones because like if it's like not that I don't enjoy doing like specific request stuff too, but that's a little bit more stressful because it's like, all right, I got to do this like one thing that this dude wants. Whereas if it's just kind of like an in general, just like improve it, that I can kind of like use a little bit of like poetic license or whatever, Cymbal Smith.
I saw you had an old K come in recently. What'd you end up doing to it?
Oh man, not sure which one you're referring to. I've done several.
There was one where you like took off. I mean, you like lathed it. You freshly lathed it or something.
Oh yeah. That was. I think I lathed the bottom and. He wanted to keep the trademark, obviously, because that's like the thing that signifies its value. So I just lathed like the other part of the top that didn't take that off. It was just too heavy for this particular guy's liking. So I did not hammer it. I don't like hammering old case. It's dangerous because the bronze over time just keeps getting harder and harder and harder and more brittle. So like the likelihood of cracking it just goes way, way up. And I don't want to be on the hook for like your $2,000 okay, Never happened.
How much did you, with that gong, how much did you end up having to chop off of it? Not lathe off of it?
Dude, it was. I weighed it on my scale and it just errored out the scale. It's like it didn't even register, so it was like too heavy. So it was definitely even after I cut it down. So it was 26 inches. I cut it down to about 22 inches, and it was still over 4,000 grams. It was like it was obscenely thick. So I brought it down to about 2,700. So I lathed off like a medium ride's worth of bronze. Yeah.
And what do you do with all the shavings?
The brick recycling down the street. Yeah, I recycle it because they give you they don't give you the full value of it. They give you a yellow brass value, which isn't quite as good as bronze, but that's what you can get. So it's something,
So what would a flat ride typically weigh?
Well, depends on the size, but this was we'll say for a 22. The flat rides in like the 70s and 80s were like really heavy. Like I don't know. I think Peisty came out with the first flat ride, I believe. And Zildjian followed suit. And I remember like the older ones, like they were just like, okay, it's just like a big heavy cymbal, just make it flat. But like when you do that, the flat ride is already so articulate, right? There's not a lot going on as far as overtones. It's just on one monotone pitch. So when it's also stiff and it's also heavy, it's like a really bad combination of characteristics. Ding, 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 ding. You know, that's all you get out of it.
I have
So
one that you modded.
Yeah.
Get it.
Yeah.
It's the A, I believe.
So, like, flat rides typically sound better if they're, like, a little bit thinner, I think. And especially if you're trying to play, like, lighter rock or jazz or something.
Yeah. This was a hubcap when I sent it to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of those. I think I put a little, like, mini bell into that.
You did. I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of
really, really low profile. Yeah, that one came out.
Interesting cymbal. And it had, when I got it, someone had put one rivet in it, which you kept in there, which is cool.
Oh, yeah.
But this was such a manhole cover when I sent it to you, but it's got some flex to it.
Yeah, they were really. I think they've changed course a little bit. I've noticed the newer stuff from the big cymbal factories is come down a little bit in weight. They're sort of responding to like people like me, probably trying to put me out of business.
Yeah.
Right? But man, for a while, those things they were just making really heavy stuff, which never really made any sense to me because you make less money because like you pay per weight for the raw material, right?
Right.
So like if you can get away with selling a medium thin versus a medium, like, you know, it's usually the same price that you charge the customer. So I don't know.
I never thought about that. Well, less metal.
When you own a business, all you think about is money, you know, profit and money and shit. No,
so those of you who are joining us, if you have any questions for Nick, I guess there's like a question window. No questions yet, but we're going to jump into chatting about the mods you did for us recently. Let's talk about bronze types. So we sent you, okay, you can elaborate more, but our original conversation, my goal was to find just some cheaper cymbals so then we could go through the process of modifying them, making them a bit more handcrafted, a little bit more nuanced, but not having to charge like tons of money for them.
Yeah.
So we're essentially giving you, you know, a handcrafted versus handmade is very touchy. Handcrafted is what you did. It's not handmade. They were machine made, and then you handcrafted them into something else. I think you kind of knocked it out of the park. Especially, I'm thinking like back when I was in high school and I was buying B8 cymbals and B8 Pros, and you know, none of them sounded like these. They were, you know, they worked, they were okay, but I would have to spend the extra $150 to get the Ks or whatever that I ended up with later. So we chose B12.
Yes.
What is B12? Let's start there.
B12 is it's a type of phosphorus bronze, which is different than like B20. Most people know that term. That's 20% tin, 80% copper, more or less, which is like what the typical high-end cymbal, the Zildjian A and all those things are made out of the B20. Phosphorus bronze is a very different kind of bronze, like B8, B10, B12, even B15, Peiste's signature alloy. It's not, the difference isn't just the amount of tin. It's like the whole way that it's made is completely differently. Really? So if you were to watch like a video of like one of the Turkish manufacturers, you know, of like the way they do the bronze, it's quite a bit different. The whole casting, they do it in way bigger quantities in like these huge factories that make like that material not just for cymbals but for other industries. So they just do these like enormous batches of it. It's pretty cool. But it has
bronze. You're talking about the B20 or the B12?
No, the phosphor bronze alloys, okay. the lower tin ones. So it's while it's still bronze, it's like pretty different as far as the way it feels, the way it responds to cold working, the way it responds to hammering, lathing, and everything. It's more malleable, so it's softer. So it needs to be treated quite a bit different. But as far as sonic characteristics, it tends to be brighter. It has more high frequencies than low frequencies, which can be an advantage depending on what you're trying to get out of the cymbal or what kind of music you're playing.
So B10 and B12 are not close at all?
No, B10 and B12 are almost indistinguishable. Oh. Like if you put them side by side, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. B8, B12, there is a noticeable improvement in quality to somebody who's got somewhat of a refined ear. like, you know, somebody who played a lot of cymbals would notice. And then the jump from like the B12 to the Paiste signature alloy, it's again, like it's significant enough that if you have some experience, you can notice it. But if you're sort of like an everyman drummer who doesn't really pay attention to this kind of nerdy stuff, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference, you know.
Now, aren't the giant beats B8?
Yes.
The giant beats. So
yes.
those are incredibly nuanced. So why is B8 thought to be cheap, like not sounding good? Like why is it been relegated to like beginner cheap stuff? Even though the giant beats are some of my favorite sounding cymbals.
They're awesome. I love those. They're so good. It's all about manufacturing. It's all about the approach to it. So it's quite a bit of work, and to get a B20 product, it's sort of a difficult process. But like I was explaining earlier with the phosphor bronze alloys, the B8, B10, B12, B15s, they're already made by an industrial base that has existed for a long time, has nothing to do with cymbals. So like Paiste, for example, they don't make their own bronze in-house. They get it from a supplier that's making that same material for other things too. So by it already existing in the marketplace, you know, they don't have to make that investment in their equipment to set up a cymbal-specific foundry necessarily. So that's part of it. So they get it in these large quantities, and it's very easy to machine quickly into a cymbal because of its malleability. Like you can literally take it, and there's less impurities because of the way that it's cast, and then you can just basically, if you want to, you can get it into a cymbal shape, like with 2 steps, you know, either by spin forming or by just literally hydraulic stamping. And you can even have the die that stamps the shape of the cymbal have like little hammer impressions and lathe grooves on it, so it's like a one-stop shop cymbal. It literally takes like 2 seconds.
No kidding. Yeah. So a lot of those entry-level cymbals that look like even hammered or whatever, it's just stamped.
It's just completely, it's just like one, poof, that's it, one step. And, you know, that's why they're like $150, because like, amazing. It's just buy the material, zzz, boom, out, you know. So, but Paiste, the reason, like you asked why are they so nuanced, because Paiste's like, no, let's take like a different approach to the material. They actually work the material the way that, very similar to the way you would work like a B20 cymbal. It's a little bit different, but they're doing the shaping process via hammering as opposed to just like a stamping thing, and then they're actually lading it and they're annealing it, heat treating it, and doing some other things to it. So it's just the amount of like labor and investment that goes into it, you know. So
when you hear like the cymbals we sent you to do the DFD mod line, what do you hear right away that's like, this needs to be fixed in these stamped type cymbals?
Well, first of all, those were pretty nice as far as you know, like mid-range, I guess you would call them cymbals. Like, I mean, I think they did a nice job designing that series. I mean, I don't know why they discontinued it, but it's not necessarily like what's wrong with it. It's just like what could be better about it. You know, what could I improve about it? And typically it's just the fact that the pitch is just so uniform, you know?
Right.
It's like just one note, and they tend to resonate a lot. Like there's no decay. Like it just goes on, you know, it's like, okay, like still ringing, you know? So that's kind of like one of my first things is like, okay, how do I make it more, you know, like, I don't know the word for it, but humanize it really, you know, just gotta spend time with it, you know, and like put some of yourself into it, and like you start to just take on those characteristics that have more depth and feel, you know. The China was like, some symbols are like, it's kind of like, it is what it is to some extent, you know what I mean? Like, so you got to work with what it is. There's no like going 180 degrees on some things, but you can just optimize it and take it in. So like that one, I added some hammering. I was a little too heavy. It didn't really open up, so I thinned it out. And then I put some holes in it because it really made it like explode, you know? So like you're kind of like listening for what are its attributes, and then like, can I enhance those, as opposed to trying to completely change it, like try to work with what it already has, unless it doesn't have anything good, and then you have to
Yeah.
You know,
What happens
totally.
when you go too far? What do you know? How do you know when you've taken a cymbal too far? And there's obviously no coming back, right?
I've learned things over time. There are sometimes you can save stuff even if you've gone too far. There's like some sort of advanced techniques I've sort of come upon. But the material stops physically responding well to work once you've overdone it. Like it can only hold so much tension inside of it. You can only squish the bronze so much before it's like, okay, I'm squished. Like that's it, you know? So that's a feel thing. Like, I don't know if I could really explain it, but you know, when you're touching it, you can feel like, okay, this thing's like getting pretty close. It's almost there. But the other thing is, the more you work something, it starts to develop more and more overtones, and like too many overtones or undertones, whatever, is not good. It's becomes ugly, you know? So that's like the line you're trying to walk, is like complexity, but not like ugliness.
So if I would have sent you that B12, what did it start as? A medium ride, maybe a heavy ride?
No, it was like a medium. I mean, yeah, it was like a medium
Was
ride.
it a medium? So what if I would have said, hey, make this sound like a K? What would you have said back to me?
Make it sound like a K?
Yeah.
I would have said, okay, yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, you would have been able to work with it enough to get it.
Yeah.
Like dark.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be 100% like a K, because that type of bronze just physically doesn't have the properties to resonate at lower frequencies so much. But you can definitely stretch the frequencies out and get more of that, you know, to the point where if it's in context with music, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that, you know, and a K. Once you take, because then you stop hearing the low frequencies anyways, once there's a bass guitar or something, you know what I mean?
So let's go through we sent you a pair of 14-inch hi-hats, 17-inch. I would say it was a pretty thin crash, a medium ride, and a 16-inch China. And I gave you no instructions. It was just, we're going to send you these, free reign to do whatever you want to do with it. So just walk us through as much as you feel like sharing of what you did with each piece.
Sure. So like part of my pre-mod process always is like, I like to take off get rid of what it is as much as possible, so that I can sort of like look at it like it's a piece of raw material. So it's sort of out of sync with the way you would make like a new cymbal from a blank, but I usually lathe first when I do a mod, just to like get I'm like taking away its identity, you know what I mean, as much as possible. Which it also makes it easier to see the hammering that you're doing, because it shows up better on like a more clean surface, which is important. You need to be able to know, you know, what you're doing. So the first thing, I open the box, you know, put them on the kit real quick, play them. I already kind of knew what they sounded like. I've heard those cymbals, you know, plenty of times in my life. And then, yeah, took them over, take away their identity, take away their logo. And then I just bring them in here and I just start going through the hammering process. And a big part of that with this material is knowing how to hammer, what hammer to use, and how much to hammer. Like that all matters. It's not like you just start going off, you know. It's gonna be very dangerous.
That would be me.
Yeah, because this material is very, very much softer than B20. So if you use the same hammer that you would use to hammer like a B20 cymbal, you'll like mess it up, you know. So,
man, I had a 24-inch old A. It was heavy. This was in high school. I actually got it from my high school. They gave it to me when they got a new set of cymbals, and it was so dang heavy. And I remember taking it home and just trying to hammer it. Just don't.
Did you?
Just.
How have I never heard this story before?
Because it didn't do anything. It literally didn't do anything to the cymbal. I mean, I was just using like a nail hammer.
Yeah.
I had no weight, no anvil. I was just smashing it against the ground.
Yeah, that was the first thing I did too. I did that with the B8 Pro medium ride, and I cracked it immediately.
Yeah, it didn't do crap to it. I ended up giving it away. I shouldn't have, because I could have sent it to you. I wanted it to sound like Brian Blake, because I know he played a 24-inch A in the early years with Joshua Redman. This was not that. It was like a 24-inch ping ride or something.
Yeah. Man, I wish I could see that.
I know who has it, but I think he might have sold it since.
Did you crack it?
No. No, I mean,
How did you get away with not cracking it?
It was, I mean, it was a tank. I mean, it was, I don't know. I mean, I didn't spend more than maybe 5 minutes smashing it around.
Let me ask you this: did you put it against the ground so that there was something supporting it?
Yeah.
When you hammered against it?
In the concrete floor of my parents' garage.
Okay, at least you knew to do that. I took the cymbal and just hit it with a hammer, and was like, okay, it's like round one, like lesson one.
Well,
don't do that again.
Like you were playing it with a hammer?
Basically, yeah.
Amazing.
That was like 11 years ago, so I've come on somewhat of a long way. But yeah, I mean, you gotta,
Incredible.
Start somewhere, dude. Like there was, I don't think, there was no YouTube at that time. There was no way to see anybody hammering a cymbal. So it was all just like what you've heard in, marketing or whatever. So you're just like, let's do it,
So on that note, I saw you just launched a Patreon page. What are you sharing over there? Just
like general cymbal information. Like it's not necessarily, it's not like a cymbal maker's training program or anything like that, but it is a place to learn about cymbals. I think it's a service that's needed in this new growing industry of like craftsman cymbals and stuff being made, so that people can ask the right questions and be more informed about what's possible and what's not, because that it really becomes one of the most time consuming things about running this business for me. And it's kind of gotten to the point where like I can't give like all the information to everybody that I need to or that I want to, because I just literally don't have time. So I figured let's try to centralize this, like put it somewhere in a way that's like presented that makes sense. So I'm going to talk about like, profile shapes and bell shapes and alloys and, all the different kind of stuff that I think most people just don't really know about, because why would they?
And the address is it patreon.com, NickyMoon Cymbal? What is the...
/ NickyMoon Cymbals.
Okay.
Yeah.
NickyMoon Cymbals. Go check it out. So you just have one tier at the moment?
Yeah. I don't know, like I figured I would start simple and let it sort of grow organically. I don't like plan stuff really. That if I were to sit down and be like, okay, I got to do a Patreon, I got to do this tier, I would never do it. I would think about it until like I died, and that would be the end of it. Yeah. So I'm like, let me just start the damn thing, the one tier, and then like I'll figure it out as I go, because that's what I did with the business and everything else in life. So yeah. That's my approach, dude. Yeah.
Sweet. Let's check it out. Everyone, we have a few people here. So any questions for Nick before we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes? But I kind of derailed. You were talking about what you did. So the DFD mod line, if anyone tuning in hasn't checked them out yet, go back a few posts on the Drum Factory Direct page. You'll see the demo that I played of them. 14-inch ripple hats, 17-inch quick crash, 20-inch medium ride, just a ride, 20-inch ride, 16-inch FX China. They started as mid-level factory B12 bronze cymbals. Those were just stamped, right? Like no hand manipulation to those to start with.
They may have received some like CNC work.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the extent of it, though. It wasn't actually
so what did you do to the hi-hats?
What did I do to the hi-hats? I changed the weight distribution of them a little bit. I made the top hat, I think, a little bit thinner than it had originally been, like in relation to the bottom hat, because I think they were really close. And then they were really bright. Like they reminded me of, I think we talked about this recently, my first set of hi-hats, which was the scimitars.
Oh yeah.
Everybody remembers those. They were just like oh my God, dude. They were so bright. Like, wow. I still have tinnitus from those hi-hats. So it kind of reminded me of that. So I was like, all right, I have to like make these a little bit darker and just like give it bring the pitch down was like the biggest part of that, So it just doesn't cut quite so much. Because I felt like they were out of sync with the rest of the cymbals. Like the other things were bright, but they weren't like overly bright, but those to me were standoutish. So, yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, hi-hats seem to be the hardest thing to get right.
Hi-hats are tough.
I played a lot of bad hi-hats.
Yeah, hi-hats are very, very difficult to make because it's like when you make a regular cymbal, the goal is to make it resonate and sound good. But like hi-hats, no, like that doesn't really matter. They have to just not sound bad when they're put together, and that's actually sounds simple, but there's so many places for them to touch each other and in an unpleasant way where it makes like a or like a, you know, unpleasant noise. So the profiles have to match up in just a way, and the tension has to be not too much, not too little, so that they meet, like, you know, well. Which is why like orchestral cymbals, like those are like really, I haven't made any, but like that's an art in itself because they have to just work together, you know.
Kyle asked, what's up, Kyle? What are Ripple hats? Are they like Master Sounds?
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Like they are like Master Sounds. They are like Master Sounds, or what's the place?
Sound Edge.
Sound Edge. Yeah, they're like the wavy potato chip edges. Yeah, they're cool. They're very cool.
Which I found they make the cymbals brighter. I don't know why it does that, but it makes them more bright and more like cutting.
Yes.
You kind of have to hit them hard. They're not.
They do cut, but it's different. I've always thought like the advertisement on those is always like, oh, like it gives you this killer foot chick, and like it's. I always felt like, yeah, it cuts, but it's not as weighty. Like, because like when two cymbals touch and they close completely, there's like a vacuum that happens, like a, you know, like a. When that design is to let air not ever get stuck, so like you don't get that full like weighty vacuum sounds. But it's like a different kind of bright that I think, again, if you heard it from not behind the kit, but like from the front of house, you'd be like, that's where it cuts. That's where you hear it, you know? Yeah,
they seem to, the harder I hit them, the better they sounded, the more kind of natural they felt.
Yeah, they don't choke, you know, the way like.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of the deal. Yeah.
So these DFD mods, we probably should explain the whole concept.
Yes.
They're all one of a kind, so we will never intentionally repeat ourselves. That's the process. So I just found some cymbals, sent them to you, and said, do whatever you want to do with them. So it's not like we're going to have Ripple hats again intentionally. It's not like we're going to have a 16-inch FX China again intentionally. So if anyone's interested in checking them out, these are... we wanted these to be like super affordably priced, even though you're getting a master craftsman to do some work on them. So if you like what you hear on the page, go get them now. I'm going to say that Quick Crash is the one to get. If you need a 17-inch crash for rehearsals, or if you just need something that's not going to break the bank, but it sounds nice, I would put that up against any pro-level crash, honestly.
No doubt.
Yeah,
I think that was probably the star of the bunch, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all gems. So like, you know, when you see them, if you like them, you should get them because they may never be there again.
Yeah. Well, they will never be there again. I will never, at least not in the next 6 months, will I send you this exact configuration of cymbals again.
And even then, like it won't be the same mod or whatever. Everything will be sort of its own thing. So that's kind of like the cool, it's like got that treasure hunt vibe to it, you know? Yeah,
these I wanted to keep them, the price, you know, very competitive, but then maybe the next ones we might go super high end. It just depends on whatever kind of crosses our paths here, which I think is the cool part about this concept. When we started talking, I was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's make it a boutique section of Drum Factory Direct. So
I love it.
One of one.
Yeah, man. You know? I love it. And I think like, you know, what each piece is going to be and like what it's going to cost is all going to depend on what it starts as and what the potential is for it, you know. For some of these, like those, like we want to end at like a nice, high quality, but still semi like affordable thing. So like, okay, we'll do an appropriate amount of work to make that happen. And then there might be a piece of starting material where we're like, okay, this could be like a Mona Lisa, like let's take it in that direction, you know. So yeah.
What did you do to the ride, the 20-inch medium ride?
I tickled it a little bit. It told she was pretty. The ride cymbals from that are made that way have a weird, I don't know, I say weird to me, but they have a shape that I don't like. The way the edges finish, and you see this on a lot of Paiste cymbals too, and I love Paiste, but I don't like the shapes. To me are strange. The curvature on the end doesn't kind of end the way it kind of just goes and flattens out. sort of that's a result of like really quick manufacturing, like get up, stamp it, get it out, who cares? So I wanted to address that. That was a big part of it, because to me that's a very important area for the whole cymbal to sound the way that I want it to.
What does that do? What does the edge do to the sound?
It changes everything about the cymbal.
Really?
That edge curve changes the whole cymbal. If it's flat, if it's like aggressive, if it's like a sort of a long taper or a short taper like that. Because that curve affects, if you think about it, say this is the edge of the cymbal, right? And my knuckles are the curve. What happens from here to here affects the whole rest of the bow. So if it's gradual, it's like more of a slope. Whereas if it's like a sharp decline, like this starts to dip down. Or if it's just like a sort of flat thing, it doesn't really crash or open up well, because it's just kind of too flat, like a pancake, you know. So that's all stuff that I've learned just through like making different shapes, and so that's a very important part.
I've never asked you this. If I sent you a 24-inch medium by any manufacturer, medium ride, and I said cut it down to 22, would you have to change the edge? Can you change the edge?
Yes, and yes. It depends on what cymbal it is, because actually some big cymbal models have too much curvature, and that's one of the reasons that they don't sound good. It's just overboard. It's too big of a profile. So sometimes if you cut down just like a little bit off the cymbal, it actually makes it sound better, because it brings the profile into more of like a reasonable shape. But more often than not, when you're cutting off like, 2 inches or more, you're losing a big percentage of that curvature, and then the cymbal starts to sound really odd and kind of gongy and flat. So that needs to go through hand hammering again, in with a very calculated approach of how to get it to bend where you want it to bend.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty difficult operation.
It is. It's actually almost, sometimes it is more work than making a cymbal from scratch. You kind of have to undo what's been done to then like do it again. So.
Okay, so last question on that topic would be, so let's say I have a cymbal that I just hate, and I want you to either transform into something entirely different, or would you just say buy something new, get something freshly made?
It depends on how specific your end result is. If sometimes I get people who ask me like, oh, can you make this Sabian AA like one of your 1 series? And it's like, no, like I can't do that. 1 series has to be made. The whole process has to be a certain way from start to finish, And excuse me. Sorry, what was the question again? I got lost.
Like, if the mod is too extreme, is it better to just...
Right. Yeah. That I have. That has been something I've told people. Like, I'm always honest with people, like what they're asking for. If it's just too, because my whole thing with modifications is like I want it to be less than a new cymbal. That's like why it's attractive to people, right? So it has to work out. So if it's going to be such an obscene amount of work, that like I'm kind of like ripping myself off at that point. You know what I mean? Like I can't do that much work for that little money. But like sometimes people want to like, if you have like a bright zinger dinger and you're like, I want to like a Byzance, extra dry, whatever thing. Like if they're just too different, sometimes that might be like, you might want to consider maybe just starting from scratch. But more like most often, as long as there's enough material for me to work with and the bell shape isn't too huge or ridiculous, like I can turn pretty much anything into whatever. It just has to have enough starting weight. Yeah. Because if it's too thin, like I can only hammer it so much before it dies, or there's not a lot I can lathe off, So you have to have like, you think of like a sculptor, right? They take like a whole, actually Schwarzenegger has a great way of explaining this for bodybuilding, right? Because he's like, people don't eat enough. Like they just want to be thin and lean. But the first thing you have to do is put mass on your body. because then you have to put something there to sculpt down, like to work it down into like your physique. And it's just like a sculptor, like they start with a big block of clay and they work it down into like every little detail. But if you start with just like a little string, there's nothing there to, you know.
So I'm definitely in the bulking up mode of my physique.
Who isn't, dude? It's the winter. I'm putting on the winter weight, man. Let's bulk. I naturally start like ways. Getting fat like at this time of year. Like my body's just like, oh, it's winter time. All right, sweet. Hold the metabolism for 6 months.
Yeah, the past 2 years I never got out of that mode. I've just been holding the metabolism for 2 years.
Yeah, dude, the whole world, everyone's been stuck inside. But did I answer your question? I think I did. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of, you know, yeah, you'd want to do a delicate mod. Minor things, do a mod. If you have a whole new idea, just get a new cymbal. That's good. I'm not precious about cymbals. I guess I understand why some people are, but there isn't anything that I'm like, oh, I have to use this cymbal, but I hate it. You know? Yeah. Just make me like this cymbal that I absolutely hate. I'd rather do something new, but that's just me.
Yeah, it's like for the guys that have like it's usually jazz drummers too. They have like the ultra specific request. Like it has to have like this kind of stick thing. It has to sustain this way. It has to die this quickly. It has to like, you know, it's that many parameters. Like I'm like, dude, I gotta start from the beginning. Like I have to. Otherwise, it's like, you know, it's just almost impossible.
So you know, I've been at like a deep Elvin Jones phase for the past couple of weeks. I don't think he used the same ride twice ever on any records.
I doubt it.
So it's like this mystery of the Elvin ride sound. I was like, well, which record, man? Because sometimes it sounds like he's using a Peisty. Sometimes it sounds like he's using someone else's cymbals.
Yes.
And sometimes it's that super breathy sound. But that, to me, it comes down to the touch. Like, if you're being that specific about the sound you want, then you should probably spend more time playing the records and figure out how to get the sound with your hands.
Yeah, but
Elvin, Blakey, Philly Joe, Tony, all these guys that we all say, you know, that's the sound. Well, which record are you listening to? Because it's different
100%.
Every single
100%. I mean, think about it. Like, how many of us like just play the same thing all the time? Like, just because they're pros doesn't mean they just have like one kit of gear that they just like have used for their whole career.
Yeah.
You know, even if that's what they say in the ads, like behind the scenes, like, no, dude. Like, if you've ever done an album, you know, dude, like you use different drums, you use different cymbals. Like, it's just the way it works. It has to. Yeah. It has to serve the song. It has to serve the situation. You know. So,
and I mean, I saw that I think with Don Bennett, he was brought in to kind of help organize his Elvin's collection after he passed. He had an apartment full of Ks.
Did he really?
Yeah. It's like, which one of these? You don't even know if he ever actually used that one. That one that you're gonna spend $5,000 on because it was an Elvin's collection.
Yeah.
You don't even know if he ever played the stupid thing.
Dude, I mean, I'm sure he had access to like, you know, the Diligent Vault to go in and pick out, you know, the best of the old Ks, you know. And I know he did have, it was a Peisty 2002 medium, not a medium ride, just the medium, which was actually quite thin cymbal because it was like a general purpose cymbal. But I saw it for sale online. It was like apparently from Elvin's estate. So like he did have one of those too. So that was like the bright cymbal that you heard, you know.
Yeah, I don't know what record I was just listening to the other day, and it was like, that is a bright sounding ride cymbal.
Yeah, but I mean, that works for like bebop. Like, I mean, like Farnsworth plays like a ding 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 kind of ride. Like, that's what he's into, you know. And like he makes it sound great. Like, I couldn't play jazz on that thing. Like, I would be like fumbling all over myself. But when you got that wrist, like, forget it, man. So. Have
you made your holy grail yet, or are you still searching for it?
Oh, yeah. Dude, I mean, I've made a lot of them, to be honest with you. Like, I don't mean to sound like, not to sound like full of myself at all, but like I've made a lot of cymbals that I really, really loved, and I wouldn't know how to say that one of them was better than the other one. I mean, that original 1 series that you reviewed for Modern Drummer was like, maybe that was it, you know?
Yeah, like, I think that was the one I told you, like, you might have struck gold with this. Was it the 20 or the 20?
It was a 22. That was the ride that I literally spent 6 months working on, just coming back to it, letting it sit for like several weeks because like it just wasn't quite there. And obviously, like if you work hard enough on something, I guess you get a good result. And I sold it immediately to like a 15-year-old kid.
Right.
Who, I think he still plays it. I mean, he's a good drummer, but that's the one that everybody. I mean, I think it's because you play it though. So people are like, oh, they hear Dawson playing it, they want that one. Because you could make it.
And
tune it can't sound good.
I got a story about that cymbal. Is it took us a while to get to know each other.
Yeah.
When I first hit it, I was like, oh, I'm not sure what to do with this. It took a different stick. But then I found the spot. I was like, there it is. Whatever just happened in the past 5 minutes, we got to know each other. And again, I think it goes back to touch more than anything. It's like, what is this cymbal giving me?
Yep.
What is it? How do I play it to make sure that whatever it's giving me is optimized? Which is why I love playing your handcrafted stuff, because it's like, you got to discover what's in each one of these things.
Absolutely.
I'll be honest, I still don't know what this thing is supposed to do. I've been playing this flat for how many years now?
I think it's supposed to be.
Still confused.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, if you don't get unconfused in like another 2 years or something, let's like rework it. But I mean, it's from what I've seen of it, it sounds great paired with like one of my weird creations when you're doing like your alien stuff. Like it really it works well for that. But that's a great point, and something that some drummers need to learn. They'll get a cymbal and they'll hit it one time, like, oh, that's not the one, that's not it. I'm like, dude, settle down. This took me 3 months. Like, sit down and like, don't write it off yet. Like, spend some time with it. Play it in like a few different rooms. You know what I mean? Let the thing breathe. Like, it was just made. It needs like a few months. And learn, like you said, where to hit it, how to hit it. And like, pretty soon you're gonna realize, like, oh man, now I get it. You know, that's part of the process, dude. Like, I think it's rare for somebody to be like, to hit it one time. And I think sometimes on those cymbals, the one where you hit it and you're like, that's the one, then like a couple months later, you're like, oh, it's not the one, you know. I thought it was the one, but it isn't.
I have one that I sold. I'm not going to tell you who made it, but I thought it was the one for years, and then suddenly I was like, this thing sounds like garbage. I don't know what happened.
I mean,
how many
albums, right? How many albums like you listen to when like a band or an artist comes out that you like, and you hear their new record and you're like, oh man, this sucks. I'm so bummed over this. And then over like months or maybe even years later in your life, you come back to it and you're like, this is a masterpiece, right? It's a masterpiece.
Radiohead Kid A for me.
Yeah.
That's the record.
Yeah.
It took me 10 years to be like, oh, I absolutely love this record.
Like, it's amazing.
When I first bought that CD, I took it back to the store.
Did you really?
No, it wasn't Kid A. It was Hail to the Thief, or Hail the Thief, whatever that one is. Bought it, drove home, listening to it, drove right back to the record store and returned it. Got my $20 back, and then 15 years later, it's like one of my favorite records.
Yeah, man, that's my point, you know. And if something sounds too good, if you listen to that album, and like you're like, oh man, all 10 songs are perfect. In like 2 weeks, you're totally sick of it. And you're like, oh, okay, it was too easy, you know.
Oh man, that metaphor for cymbals is perfect, because I feel like a lot of companies are getting, they've taken all the mystery out of it. It's like, there it is, I've whittled down the darkest, driest, most complex, perfect sound. As soon as you hit it, it's like a sample. I don't want my cymbals to be that way, because then it's so one-dimensional. It's like, cool, it does that one thing, but can I get anything else out of it? That's what happened with the cymbal. It was like the first, God, we're going back like 15 years when companies were trying to do the Nefertiti ride cymbal. And it was the first one that they were like, this is the Nefertiti ride. So I'm like, cool, I've got to get that. Just Tony Wood's Nefertiti. And then, you know, my untrained ears was like, of course, it's the Nefertiti sound. And then a year later, it's like, there's nothing to this cymbal. There's literally nothing here. Yeah. It's just a dull click. That's all it was.
Yeah, the Nefertiti ride was funky sounding. I mean, by all accounts, and I know somebody who has touched it and handled it, and they have showed me pictures of it, so the one, and told me about it, and it is indeed like, it sounds very good in context, but I think if a lot of people heard it out of context, they'd be like, that's it? You know? I don't know, man. Yeah. So,
and again, that's Tony's hands. He's got that weird thumb.
It's Tony, dude. It's Tony.
Yeah.
You know, like, how many who was it? It was a guitar player. Like somebody did this online recently. I forget. A guitar player with a very sort of unique tone. You know, played a completely different rig, completely different guitar, and it was like instantly, I'm like, that's him. Like it's literally him. Like it has nothing to do with the gear. It has so little to do with the gear. You know, not the gear's not important. You know, you gotta have good cymbals, but not to talk myself out of a job here, folks. But you know, definitely put the emphasis on your playing and yourself, and then like your who you are before everything else, man. You know, that's like a life lesson too. So.
Yeah, never ending, always evolving. Well, let's wrap it up here. If anyone has any questions, those of you who are still in with us, drop it in now. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up. So go check out the DFD mod line. It's live on drumfactorydirect.com for sale, and I put a demo. I think it was like on Wednesday. Wednesday, we're doing new product demos on Instagram and Facebook. So it was cool. Wednesday's post. I played a ball in context here in my studio, which is behind this room right here. I used Earthworks overheads to try to get the most natural, you know, replication of those things possible. So that's what they are. They're B12. I'm not going to tell you what they started as, but you could figure it out. They were B12 cymbals, 14-inch ripple hats, 17-inch quick crash, 20-inch medium rides, 16-inch FX China. I believe they're all still available. If not, sorry about your luck. But yeah. Someone go buy that 17-inch quick crash today. Yes. And then snag the medium ride is my second favorite. I think that's a good rehearsal cymbal, practice cymbal, teaching cymbal. Maybe if you're
great general purpose gigging cymbal too, especially for rock drummers, man. Those like lower tin alloys, they might not sound as pleasant. Like you might be like, oh, it's a little bright, but man, go on stage and you don't have to hit it as hard, dude. You can like just tap it and it's gonna like, you know, work for you, which is like, that's great when you're playing loud stuff.
All right, man. Let's wrap it up. No questions came in. Thank you all for tuning in. We will hopefully as soon as these get out the door, we'll get the next batch rolling and
working on the next one.
It's like the what's the dum flavor? That's just a question mark on it. The mystery flavor. Yeah. Yeah. Who knows what we're gonna get? We do have some. Our little spoiler. We do have some of Matt, the CEO's personal cymbals that he's like, I've got these cymbals. Let's just send them over to Nick. He doesn't know what they are because they're in his.
Oh yeah, man.
Virginia.
Let's do it.
We'll send them over. So we have a fresh batch coming, but snag these. Yeah, that's it for me, man. You got anything else to wrap up? Go follow Nick on Patreon. Support his page is $10, right? To get a lot of knowledge on the history and all the cool stuff about cymbals. General cymbal related knowledge for cymbal fans, players, cymbal makers, anybody. There's something to learn for everybody. And I will post the video also of the DFD cymbals on my Instagram probably tomorrow. I was trying to space it out a little bit because you put it up the other day. So those will be there. They're on the DFD website. They're on Dawson's page. And go check them out. Go get them. They're awesome. And that's it. All right, man. I'll talk to you offline soon. All right, brother. Thanks, man. Later.